There was a kitchen in every Black neighborhood where a grandmother stood on her feet all day, bending, lifting, scrubbing, and never once complained about her joints. She had no doctor, no prescription, no supplement, just two strong hands and whatever her mother taught her. Today, joint pain is one of the fastest growing health complaints among Black women. Yet in the 1960s, women doing far harder physical labor walked 2 miles a day, simmered bone broth for 12 hours straight, and stayed flexible well into old age. Something protected those joints, and it was not medicine. It was 25 things hiding in plain sight inside her daily routine. Out in the backyard, the soil was never left to rest. Hands gripped the wooden handle of a spade, turning earth that had grown hard through winter. Rows of collards and beans took shape under fingers that knew the rhythm of digging, lifting, and planting by heart. 3 times a week, sometimes more, women stooped low, knees bent, backs straight, and pressed their weight into the ground. The garden was less a hobby and more a quiet resistance, a way to feed a family, a way to keep the body moving. Each dig and lift pulled against the body's own weight, loading bones and joints with the kind of effort modern gyms try to imitate. Oral histories from the era recall this work as routine, not remarkable, yet biomechanical studies now show that this pattern, short bursts of heavy effort repeated week after week, signals the skeleton to grow stronger. The hips and knees learn to bear loads up to 2.5 times body weight, but always with a pause between, never the grind of endless repetition. The garden's work shaped more than just the harvest. It trained joints to adapt, bones to renew, and muscles to support. Even as the sun set and the day's labor ended, the body remembered what the earth had taught it. Resilience is built from the ground up. Sidewalks stretched out beneath sturdy shoes, carrying women from front doors to church pews and market stalls. Each Sunday morning, the streets filled with neighbors moving in quiet procession, hats pinned, baskets swinging, children in tow. On weekdays, the same paths led to corner stores and friends' porches, errands stitched together by steady footsteps. These walks were not for leisure. They were purposeful, woven into the fabric of daily life, a living thread connecting home, faith, and community. Elders recall covering 2 miles or more each day, rain or shine, a pattern so common that 9 out of 10 women in oral histories reported it without a second thought. Modern science now traces a link between this kind of purposeful walking and lower levels of inflammation in the body. Blood tests from recent studies show that regular, moderate walking can lower markers like IL-6 and C reactive protein, signals of swelling inside the joints. For the women of the 1960s, the effect was invisible but real. Each outing sent blood flowing through tired legs, carrying oxygen and healing warmth to knees and hips that bent and straightened with every stride. The rhythm of these walks, neither hurried nor idle, offered a kind of medicine that no pharmacy stocked. In a world with few prescriptions, movement itself became the remedy, passed down as quietly as a family recipe. The body learned endurance, the joints remembered flexibility, and the heart stayed strong mile after mile. In kitchens and backyards across the block, a quiet lesson unfolded each time a basket needed moving. Instead of bending to lift or dragging loads by hand, many women balanced baskets, laundry, or even bundles of groceries atop their heads, arms swinging free. The practice did not begin with adulthood. Little girls learned early, first with a folded cloth, then a light pot, how to walk tall and steady, eyes forward, chin level. By the 1960s, more than half the women in some neighborhoods carried something on their heads at least once a week. It was a skill passed down, not for show, but for ease and endurance. Balancing a load this way meant the weight pressed straight down through the bones of the spine, not off to one side or straining the lower back. Oral histories recall mothers correcting posture with a gentle tap, saying, "Straighten up, let the basket ride. Modern studies now suggest that this habit reduced twisting and shearing in the lower back, letting the strong muscles along the spine do their work without overloading the knees or hips. The head, neck, and shoulders became a single column, carrying the day's work with a certain grace. Each trip from garden to kitchen or from market to home became a lesson in alignment, a natural tactic for keeping joints healthy, long before anyone spoke of ergonomics or physical therapy. The body moved as it was taught, upright, balanced, and quietly resilient. On cool mornings, bare feet pressed against hardwood or smooth linoleum, testing the ground before the day's work began. The shoes waiting by the door were simple, flat leather slippers with soft soles, no heel to tip the body forward, no arch stiffener to force the foot into an unnatural curve. Nearly 7 out of 10 women wore these flats indoors, favoring comfort and stability over fashion. For many, chores started barefoot. The coolness of the floor sent a signal up through the arches, waking nerves that mapped every inch of the kitchen. About a third of the women moved this way, bare, unshielded, letting their feet feel the world as it was. This quiet connection between skin and earth did more than keep the house clean. The body learned balance, adjusting with each step, every toe gripping and releasing. Scientists now call this proprioception, the body's sense of itself in space. Each barefoot hour trained ankles and knees to move in harmony, reducing the inward collapse of the knees, a risk for injury that modern shoes can sometimes make worse. The old flats and bare feet kept the gait neutral, the joints aligned, and the body aware. Even as the day's work shifted from kitchen to garden, the wisdom of these simple choices lingered, preparing the body for what came next. Strength built not from medicine, but from the ground up. In kitchens thick with the scent of simmering greens, a different kind of medicine bubbled quietly on the stove. Collards, turnip tops, and mustard leaves, gathered from backyard gardens or the corner market, were rinsed, chopped, and dropped into big iron pots. To coax out their flavor and keep their color, a splash of vinegar or a squeeze of lemon found its way into the mix. Citrus was not just for taste, it brought vitamin C, the spark needed for the body to weave strong collagen from the broth and bones that often lay at the bottom of the pot. 3 times a week, sometimes more, these stews appeared on the table. Oral histories say nearly 7 out of 10 women made greens a weekly ritual, serving them alongside cornbread or spooned over rice. Even after a long simmer, the greens held onto their vitamin C. Lab tests show nearly 45 milligrams in each serving, enough to meet most of the day's needs. This was not just luck. The careful pairing of greens with a bit of acid was a lesson handed down, a way to make sure every bite supported the joints, the skin, the bones. The beauty of these stews lay in their quiet synergy. Collagen from bones needed vitamin C to knit itself into strong, flexible strands. Without it, the body's repairs would falter. With it, each meal became a kind of daily insurance, a promise that knees and hands would keep working day after day with little complaint. In the rhythm of chopping, simmering, and serving, Black women honored what their mothers taught them. Food made right could do more for aching joints than any store-bought pill. Summer brought its own rituals to the block. On Friday afternoons, the air filled with the sizzle of fish frying in cast iron, and neighbors drifted in, drawn by the promise of a fresh catch. Catfish, whitefish, or perch, whatever the river or market offered, found its way to the table, golden and crisp, served with a squeeze of lemon and a side of greens. Nearly half of Black households made fish a weekly tradition, especially when the weather was warm and the days stretched long. What no one spoke of then, but science can trace now, is what these meals carried beneath the flavor. Each serving of fresh fish brought in over 700 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA, natural oils the body cannot make on its own. These fats slip quietly into cell walls, calming the fires of inflammation that can stiffen knees and ache in the morning. The relief was subtle, felt in joints that bent without complaint, and hands that stayed nimble for shelling peas or kneading dough. Without knowing the word for it, women passed down the habit. Eat what swims when the river runs high, and let the oils do their work. The summer fish fry was more than a meal, it was a quiet kind of medicine, shared across generations, woven into the fabric of community life. In the cool shade of the pantry, mason jars lined the shelves, rows of collards, turnip greens, and string beans, each one sealed and waiting for the lean months. When the garden slept under winter frost, these jars brought the taste of summer back to the table. But it wasn't just about saving food. The old ways of canning and fermenting greens held secrets that science is only now beginning to name. A quarter of women in oral histories recall eating home, preserved, or fermented greens at least once a week. Some jars were set aside to sour, letting time and wild air transform the leaves with gentle bubbles. These fermented greens carried living cultures, tiny helpers that traveled from plate to gut, shaping the body's defenses from the inside out. Modern research now traces a quiet thread between gut health and joint health. The live cultures in sour greens, along with the polyphenols that survived the process, helped calm the body's hidden fires. In homes where doctors were scarce and money tighter still, these jars offered more than flavor. They stretched nutrition through the seasons, bringing both comfort and quiet protection. The practice was simple, passed down with a wink. Let the greens sit, let them work. And so through jars and patience, mothers handed down a kind of daily insurance, one that worked from the inside year after year. There was a kettle in nearly every kitchen, chipped but sturdy, set to boil before sunrise and again at dusk. In the quiet of morning, women measured dried hibiscus petals or a handful of pine needles, letting them steep until the water turned ruby or golden. The ritual was simple but precise, one cup for herself, another for whoever might wander in. Sweetened with a spoonful of honey or left tart, these herbal teas were more than comfort. They were a daily habit. Passed down with a gentle nudge, she would say, "Drink up, it'll keep you strong." Nearly 6 out of 10 women began and ended their day with a steaming cup, a pattern so ordinary it rarely made its way into family stories. Yet, laboratory tests now measure over 200 milligrams of polyphenols in every 100 milliliters of hibiscus tea. These plant compounds, invisible to the eye, work quietly in the body to calm swelling and soothe sore joints. For women who could not count on a doctor's visit or a bottle of pills, the teapot offered its own protection, hydration, flavored with tradition, and a touch of medicine in every sip. The kettle song marked the start and close of each day, a small act of care repeated across kitchens year after year. On Saturday afternoons, when the chores slowed and the house grew quiet, a different kind of care passed from hand to hand. In many homes, a daughter would kneel beside her mother at the kitchen table, a bowl of warm water nearby, a towel draped across her lap. With gentle, practiced motions, she would knead tired calves and ankles, working her thumbs in slow circles, coaxing warmth and blood flow back into joints that had carried the week's burdens. This was no hurried rub. It was a ritual as familiar as the smell of simmering greens or the hum of the radio in the next room. Elders recall these kitchen table massages as a weekly gift, given in nearly 40% of households by the time the 1960s rolled around. The science behind it was unspoken but real. Light kneading sends fresh blood through the muscles, feeding the tissues and sweeping away the aches that settle after long hours on one's feet. The touch was both medicine and memory, a reminder that care could come without a doctor, that healing could begin with the hands you trusted most. This simple act, repeated week after week, helped keep joints supple, swelling at bay, and spirits lifted. Before the Epsom soak or the evening's rest, it was the daughter's hands that brought relief, a quiet promise that no one would bear the weight of the world alone. In the quiet of the evening, when the house had settled and the aches of the day pressed in, a different kind of resilience unfolded behind closed doors. A galvanized tub, sturdy and deep, was pulled from its resting place. Warm water poured in, followed by 2 generous handfuls of Epsom salt, magnesium sulfate crystals that shimmered as they dissolved. The ritual was simple but sacred: 15 minutes, twice a week, feet and legs submerged, sometimes the whole body if the tub allowed. Nearly a third of households kept this practice, passing it from mother to daughter like a recipe for resilience. The warmth alone loosened tired muscles, but the salt brought its own promise. Long before anyone spoke of transdermal uptake or clinical trials, women trusted what their bodies told them, that soaking in this mineral bath eased the heaviness in their knees and softened the stiffness in their hands. Science now debates how much magnesium truly seeps through the skin, but in these homes, the effect was felt in the slow unwinding of tension, the quiet sigh as joints released their grip. The bath was more than a remedy. It was a pause, a return to self, a moment when the weight of the world melted away with the steam. The water cooled, the aches faded, and the memory of care lingered long after the tub was emptied and set aside for another day. Long after the bath water cooled and the house had grown quiet, another kind of warmth waited in the kitchen. A simple washcloth dipped in hot water and wrung out just enough became a tool for comfort in tired hands. Women would fold the cloth and lay it over aching knees or stiff wrists, sometimes wrapping it with a strip of cotton to hold the heat in place. This wasn't a luxury, it was a nightly habit, as ordinary as brushing teeth. Most often, the ritual happened before bed, when the day's work had settled into the bones and joints asked for relief. The warmth from the cloth did more than soothe on the surface. As it rested against the skin, the blood vessels just beneath opened wide, drawing fresh blood to the area. Scientists now call this superficial vasodilation, a rush of warmth that brings oxygen and nutrients and helps the body repair itself overnight. Oral histories recall mothers teaching daughters to test the heat first, to avoid burns, and to watch for pinkness in the skin as a sign the treatment was working. No one reached for a bottle or a pill. Instead, a warm cloth and a moment of rest offered what was needed: relief, safety, and a gentle way to care for joints that had carried the weight of another long day. In homes where doctors were far and money was tight, these small acts of care made all the difference, night after night. Between the sweep of a broom and the rattle of a pot, there was a pause, a moment when the work simply stopped. Elders remember their mothers resting a hand on the kitchen table, closing their eyes, and taking 3 slow, deep breaths before picking up the next task. This was not idleness, but a quiet ritual woven into the rhythm of the day. Oral histories tell us that more than 7 out of 10 women practice these brief pauses, sometimes lasting no more than a minute. In the language of science, these moments change the body's inner weather. Heart rate slowed, breath deepened, and the invisible tide of stress hormones ebbed. Recent studies now show that even a handful of slow breaths can shift the balance of the nervous system, lowering markers like IL-6 that drive swelling in the joints. For women whose days rarely allowed for rest, these small acts of self-care became a shield against the hidden wear of stress. The pause was as much a part of the work as the scrubbing or the stirring. In homes where the doctor was far away and medicine came from memory, The breath itself became a remedy, quiet, free, and always close at hand. On certain Saturdays, a quiet signal would pass, maybe a knock, a word over the fence, a message after church. Women gathered in small groups, sleeves rolled, buckets ready. These were mutual aid cleaning days, when the hardest chores were shared out among neighbors. Chores like scrubbing floors, washing windows, and polishing pews. No one tallied favors. One week the work landed at Mrs. Carter's house, the next at the church hall, then at the home of a new mother or an elder who could no longer kneel. The rhythm was steady, as regular as Sunday dinner. Oral histories and church records note that 55% of women in some communities joined these crews at least once a month. Work moved quickly, stories and laughter rising with the steam. Children watched and learned how to wring a mop, sweep in even strokes, and carry a pail without spilling. Among the women, the load was divided, one on her knees, another on her feet, another wringing rags. Each did a part. No one carried the whole. By spreading the strain, knees and backs got a break, and the aches of age eased. In these circles, care multiplied, a network where strength was borrowed and returned, and the bonds between neighbors quietly deepened. In the hush of the kitchen, the real lessons happened not in words, but in the way a grandmother's hands moved through the day. A pot was lifted with elbows tucked close, a heavy pan shifted with a twist of the hips, never a wrench of the back. When a daughter or granddaughter hovered nearby, she was invited in, not just to watch, but to do. 77% of women from that era learned these habits by doing, not by reading or listening. The teaching was practical, almost sacred. How to kneel beside the stove instead of hunching, how to stir a thick batter with the whole arm, not just the wrist. A simple correction, bend your knees, not your waist, carried the weight of generations. These sessions often unfolded during the long hours of cooking for church events or family gatherings, when the kitchen filled with laughter and the steady rhythm of chopping, stirring, and kneading. Each gesture was passed down with care, preserving techniques that kept the body safe as the work never seemed to end. The knowledge did not come from books or doctors, but from the hands and eyes of elders who had learned in turn from their own mothers. In this way, the kitchen became a living classroom, and every meal prepared together was another lesson in how to move wisely, protect the joints, and carry on. Sunday morning was more than a day of rest. It was a celebration of motion. The church doors swung open in the sanctuary, filled with the sound of hands clapping, feet tapping, and voices rising together. In these pews and aisles, women moved with a joy that belonged to them alone. Step by step, they joined the sway of gospel rhythms, clapping in time, shifting weight from heel to toe, hips to knees. Laughter and song blended with the steady beat, each note inviting the body to loosen and the spirit to lift. Nearly 2/3 of women in oral histories recall taking part in these weekly gatherings, where movement was woven into worship. The routine was not just for show, it was a kind of medicine. Science now tells us that rhythmic, low-impact movement like clapping and step dancing sends gentle waves through the joints, pressing and releasing the cartilage, bathing it in nourishing fluid. This cyclic loading, load, release, repeat, helps keep joints supple and well lubricated. It is much like oiling a hinge, so it never sticks. The beauty of these church rituals was their accessibility. No special shoes, no lessons, just the invitation to move together. For many, it was the only structured exercise they had, and it was enough. The body remembered the music long after the service ended, carrying its benefits into the days that followed. In the rhythm of clapping hands and dancing feet, Black women found both community and quiet protection for their joints, a joyful inheritance passed down from mother to daughter, week after week. When dusk settled and the chores were done, the block would come alive with music that drifted from open windows and porch radios. On long summer evenings, women gathered in loose circles on the sidewalk or under the glow of a single street lamp, shoes kicked off, laughter rising above the hum of cicadas. Nearly half the women in oral histories recall joining these neighborhood dance circles, sometimes as part of a birthday, sometimes for no reason at all but the joy of moving together. The steps were simple, easy to follow, a two-step, a gentle sway, a clap on the offbeat. Children darted in and out, copying the grown-ups, while elders kept time with a nod or a tap of the cane. The dances lasted an hour or more, building heat in the legs and sending energy through tired joints. Unlike the hard stomping of a juke joint or the rigid drills of gym class, these circles favored smooth motions, side to side, forward and back, always in rhythm, always with friends. Modern research recognizes what these women knew by feel. Regular, low-impact movement through a full range of motion keeps knees and hips supple. The joints were gently flexed, extended, and rotated, lubricated by the body's own movement, never forced or strained. These evenings offered more than just fun. They were a kind of therapy, cardio for the heart, medicine for the joints, and balm for the spirit. In the swirl of music and motion, women found a way to care for themselves and each other, passing down health with every step. In the gentle light of the sewing room, women gathered around tables scattered with patterns, spools, and scraps of cloth. The hum of conversation wove through the steady rhythm of hands guiding fabric under the needle. Here, every stitch was a small act of care, not just for the dress or apron taking shape, but for the body that would wear it. Elastic waistbands and loose sleeves became quiet allies, chosen for comfort and ease. About 1 in 5 women, by oral history, favored these elastic garments, knowing they spared her the daily bend and twist of buttons and buckles. Each morning's dressing was simpler, each evening's undressing less of a chore. Chairs in these rooms told their own story. Nearly half of those who spent hours at the sewing machine sat on wide, supportive seats, sometimes with a cushion slipped beneath for good measure. These chairs kept the spine straight, the hips level, and the knees at rest. Instead of hunching or perching on hard stools, women settled into a posture that let the shoulders relax and the back breathe. Studies now show that such seating reduces the need for constant stooping, cutting down the strain on the lower back and knees. The sewing circle became more than a place for patching and hemming. It was a space where bodies were protected by the wisdom of adaptation. Through small changes, an elastic band here, a sturdy chair there, women found ways to soften the wear of daily work, passing these quiet innovations from one generation to the next. Sunlight filtered through broad windows, landing on floors that stretched unbroken from one end of the house to the other. In these single-story homes, the kitchen and living room stood side by side. Bedrooms were just steps away, with no stairs, no barriers. For many Black families in the 1960s, this was daily life, a house built low to the ground, every room within easy reach. Oral histories show that 34% lived entirely on ground level, never needing to climb stairs to cook, sleep, or chase after a child. The ranch house plan, common in both city neighborhoods and small towns, offered a kind of relief that rarely needed words. Modern research confirms what those families sensed. Climbing stairs puts 2 to 3 times the body's weight on knees and hips, double the load of walking across a room. Over the years, that strain wears down cartilage and grinds away at joints already tested by long days. In a stair-free home, that pressure simply never arrives. Movement stays horizontal, and the joints are spared. This wasn't just about comfort. The architecture itself protected the body. Wide halls let children run and elders walk together. Baskets were carried from pantry to porch without a jolt. Here, the body could work, rest, and recover, all on one level. Out beyond the stoop, the path from back door to garden was never just concrete or brick. In many neighborhoods, the ground was soft, layers of sand or packed earth, sometimes refreshed after a heavy rain with a new spread of sand from a nearby lot. Each step pressed gently into the surface, the ground giving just enough to cushion the feet and knees. Elders recall how, after a storm, neighbors would gather to smooth out the walkways, filling low spots and tamping down loose earth until it was firm but never hard. These paths wound through courtyards and between homes, carrying women on errands, children at play, and the weight of baskets and buckets back and forth all day. Biomechanical studies now measure what those women felt but never named. Walking on a soft, compliant surface absorbs up to 15% of the impact that would otherwise jar the knees and ankles. Unlike the unyielding slab of concrete, the earth beneath their feet offered a quiet buffer, reducing the shock that travels up the leg with every step. The body learned to move with the land, muscles and joints working together, each stride cushioned by the forgiving ground. Over time, this simple detail, just sand and soil underfoot, helped to protect the joints from the wear that harder surfaces can bring. The wisdom was in the maintenance, the care taken to keep the path soft and safe, a small act that offered daily relief, step after step. In the heart of every busy kitchen, work was shaped by the tools at hand. Wooden spoons, rolling pins, and hand-cranked egg beaters filled drawers and countertops, each one worn smooth by years of use. These were not just relics, they were chosen with care. A wooden handle fit the palm, turning dough or stirring batter with less strain on the wrist. The weight was right, never heavy enough to tire the hand, never so light it slipped away. When laundry day arrived, a hand crank wringer stood ready beside the tub. Turning that crank slow and steady called for patience more than muscle. The motion was gentle, a rhythm that let arms and shoulders work together, spreading the effort instead of forcing it all onto small joints. Oral histories say that nearly 3 out of 10 women use these cranks every week, their hands learning endurance, not exhaustion. The pace was always measured, no electric rush, just a steady pull and release. This quiet technology protected the wrists and elbows, letting women work longer without pain. Each turn of the handle, each stir of the spoon was another lesson in how to work with the body, not against it. In these simple tools, wisdom was built right in, passed down, trusted, and never hurried. The strength in those kitchens wasn't written in any medical chart. It was handed down, one whispered remedy and shared meal at a time. Today, as joint pain rises and quick fixes multiply, the old wisdom waits quietly on the edge of memory. What we inherit isn't always in our genes, it's in our habits, our tables, our hands. Sometimes the healthiest legacy is what a mother teaches her daughter. Let me know what you remember in the comments.